The next episode of Code to Culture is almost the opening of a joke.
Swalpa adjust muddy, it just makes my skin crawl. I hope they don't say it ever again.
Three Bangaloreans walk into a podcast set to dig the story of the city. One is a theatre artist and activist, the second is an ecologist, and the third a retired IAS officer.
I live in Jayanagar. Through all these years of flooding that have happened in Bangalore in the last 20 years, not once has Jayanagar flooded. Old Bangalore, nothing has happened.
I have lived in Jayanagar, JP Nagar, Indira Nagar, Cunningham Road, and now come to Sarjapur. And I can see the contrast. The center of the city has parks for every resident, let's say 1 kilometer away. The periphery of Sarjapur where I have is no parks.
I live in Indira Nagar. This is all over Bangalore. Water lines and sewer lines have X capacity, and you make it X plus
100X.
10 or 100, whatever. What is the result? So all this has been unplanned growth.
All trying to answer just one question: how did Bangalore get here? Stay tuned to find out on this episode of Code to Culture.
Thank you so much for coming. Just to set the context for Bangalore, climate and weather holds a very, very special place. That's what makes the city so special. But the city's weathers, the city's climate has been changing, along with the way the city has been changing. And what we thought we'll do in this episode is explore the city's past, the city's culture, city's anthropological journey as well. At so many levels, how climate and weather have shaped the city at so many levels. One, of course, dive into the history and evolution of the city through these lenses, and also understand how did the city get here. City is facing many challenges today. And this is all through climate and weather lens. You all are experts in different areas, and you also come from an era and also have looked at Bangalore through your childhood and through your growing up years as well. So we'll dive into some of that. And the intent is to try and look at how do we make this city more livable? How do we deal with some of the problems and challenges related to weather, climate at the cities? Are we past that point that it's not fixable? Or are there areas that we can work on to make things better? Harini Nagendra, she's an ecologist, professor and author known for her work on urban sustainability, citizen science, and making climate research accessible to everyday citizens. Welcome, Harini.
Thanks.
Prakash Belawadi is a Bengaluru-based theatre and film personality, activist and journalist, widely recognized for his sharp cultural insights and civic engagement in the city's public life. Hi, Prakash. Good to have you here again. Mr. Chiranjiv Singh. He's a former IAS officer. He retired in 2005 as a development commissioner of Karnataka and additional chief secretary. He's also an ambassador to UNESCO, known for his deep expertise in governance, heritage, and policy making, with decades of experience in civic life in Bengaluru. Thanks, and lovely to have you here, sir.
Thank you.
Just to dive in, when all of you were growing up, and I know Harini and Prakash, you've grown up here, and you've come to the city, you have adopted the city, and you know the language also very well. Take us to the earliest memories of Bangalore and weather and climate, and what do you remember about it?
We moved to Bangalore when I was 10. My father was a bureaucrat. We were in Delhi earlier. So a few things that I remember is the lakes for sure, the lakes and the parks. We used to go for very long walks in Lal Bagh, and they had deer at that time. So we used to feed the deer in Lal Bagh, and that was my favorite part of my walks with my father, feeding the deer. We used to go around Alsur Lake, and this is something I've written about in my detective fiction. I write the series called The Bangalore Detectives Club, right, which is 100 years early Bangalore. If you went around the part where you get into the Alsur main market street and you had this large rock, which is part of the defense area, there would be a woman with her cows every day throwing cow dung on the rock to make the cow dung patties. And she was such a part of, going down that road and seeing her every day. So there was the Kensington Gardens, as they call them, where sort of the more posh areas where people would move. And then there was a woman with her cattle. So to me, that is really old Bangalore. There was nature. And there was a diversity of people using it. It was the wealthy, it was then also the not so wealthy. And everybody integrated sort of very closely.
And coming from Delhi,
yeah,
what did the weather feel like here to you?
cool, for sure. But the mosquitoes were huge. I also remember that when we moved from Bangalore, every day I would come back from school till my skin got used to it with these really huge, mosquito bite bumps. Yeah.
What about you, Mr. Singh? When you came here, which was the year you first came to Bangalore?
1970.
What do you remember of the city, its weather, its climate, and which city did you grow up in?
Well, I grew up in Nabha, Khana and Chandigarh, all in Punjab, and came to Bangalore after joining the service. And 1970, it's a long time ago. And when I came to Bangalore in 1970, Bangalore seemed to be the finest city in India. I'm not sure if I would say that again, but certainly.
Explain that when you say finest city. What do you mean by that?
Cultural scene, the ambience, the climate, the people, everything put together.
Describe the climate. Coming from Punjab, what was the climate like? What did it feel like as compared to what you had experienced?
To tell you the truth, I missed the cycle of seasons of Punjab because here the climate was throughout the year the same. Now the summers have become warmer, but those days there wasn't much difference between summer and winter, if you remember.
Yes, absolutely.
So I missed that cycle of season because in Punjab life went, especially those days, went by the season.
The striking memory that I have of weather is, I used to be in a national high school. I was part of NCC Navy, and we had to wear that naval uniform, and not wear anything because you would get really scolded if you wore anything inside. You had to wear that thing, and I would cycle from Jayanagar to the national high school grounds for the NCC Sunday parade, and it was so cold riding that cycle.
Through the year?
Through the year. It was so cold, and because we had to be there, I think by 6:30, we had to be there. It was so, to cycle through I only remember mist and how cold it was. I would go shaking like that.
It was very misty. It's not misty anymore.
Yeah,
no, Bangalore is not
It was
misty
very
anymore.
misty in the mornings. During some seasons,
This was which
it was
year
not like
would it
Delhi
be?
misty. It was like a Bangalore misty thing.
So are you saying it was foggy, not smoggy?
Yeah,
Yes.
Is that what
exactly.
you're trying to say?
Yeah.
Very
The mist
milky
did
white.
not feel unpleasant.
Yeah.
The best thing, so I've lived in Delhi most of my life, and what I hated about Delhi was the sharp summer, and of course winter, but summer particularly because without AC you can't do. Here I don't need AC. And that is probably the most beautiful part
I
about
don't know, Malini, I enjoyed the summer also.
I don't know what Punjab was like, but Delhi summer is
Delhi,
not good. It's very, very high. Yeah.
I say Bangalore has two seasons, the green season and the brown season. And that's the only difference here.
Yes. I mean, Delhi particularly is a very sharp winter, and you have these seasons, and what people like about Delhi is the weather, the different set of wardrobes that you can sort of pull out, right? Sweaters, jackets, coats. But why is Bangalore's weather the way it is? In the sense, cool, different. So maybe can we just look at the geographical reason, the way the city is, where it is located, that shapes the city's weather. And I know you mentioned about it in our initial conversation, and you would. Do you want to sort of talk about what are some of the factors that have historically shaped the city's weather conditions,
And
climate?
geographically.
Absolutely.
So, I hope, Harini agrees with this. What is the height? Because, it's on top of the Deccan Plateau. It's 3,190 feet above sea level. And it's actually a ridge. And because of that, it has a kind of hill kind of weather system. In the monsoon, you get copious rain because of the Palghat Gap, as they call it, because there is a gap in the Western Ghats, and the trajectory of the southwest monsoon, allows clouds to come right up to Bangalore, and we get a lot more rain than there is a rain shadow area even in Bangalore. If you go past Yelahanka, there is less rain because of that. It's only the higher. There was a minister in the past, who said, "Why don't you chop the Western Ghats so the Yelahanka gets more rain?" I remember somebody said that. Honestly, it's true. Okay, so that is another one thing. The other reason also for the rainfall thing is that because of its location in the Deccan Plateau, we even catch the margins of the northwest monsoon. So if we get an average, we used to get 108 days of rain in a year those days. I don't have any count now because it just rains all kinds of times now. So I can't make out when it is. But at least 80 days of rain you should get in Bangalore. These are the primary reasons. The last one is, these days what happens is when whether it's the monsoon clouds or just the formation, we used to get March summer rainfalls we would get, is that because the Pacific has become warmer, the clouds that come are warmer, and when they come into contact with colder air, they condense instantly, and that's why you have cloudburst happening in the Himalayas, for instance, now.
Yeah.
So
Which is now, right?
But because Bangalore's air would be cooler at the top, it will rain very quickly when warmer air, comes into contact with cooler air. So those are the reasons I can think of.
Hari, you want to take that up and also talk about the rains that you were mentioning, how it's almost a ritual it used to be a ritual in the city that it would rain every evening and by morning it was clear.
Bangalore was always very peculiar in some ways. So,
Go ahead.
If you start, of course, it is on the plateau. So, the temperature it's cooler than the surroundings. It's also in the rain shadow of the Western Ghats. So, it's semi-arid, but more, like Prakash was saying, it gets more rainfall in the surroundings. A few things that people have also done. If you look at the trajectory of Bangalore and you go back maybe 800,000 years ago, it was completely semi-arid, open landscape, trees, very few trees, almost none of these lakes were around. And each of them has been created by people. So they were actually, depressions in the ground. So in that sense, what our own research has shown is till the 1890s, as more and more people came in, they created more and more water bodies. 1890s was the last, Sankey Tank was one of the last lakes.
Okay.
And then that, it stopped then. But they still continued to plant trees. So till the 1980s, with Nagenhal and Shyam Sundar of the Forest Service, there were lots and lots of trees planted in Bangalore.
Also, I just want to interrupt. Yeah. See, I think it was Francis Buchanan when he came in 1800, when he came into what is now Bangalore, he said this is naked country.
A very naked country.
Yeah,
and you can completely see it in the trees. And that sort of, sorry.
No, I was just saying, yes, that's what Buchanan wrote.
Yeah.
And when you come to that, I think there are 2-3 things that we have forgotten. You're very right. In the Bangalore that I remember in the 80s, 70s, 80s, I'd say even the 90s, like clockwork, it would start raining somewhere between 4 and 6 p.m. And then by sometime in the night, you wake up in the morning, 6:30, rain is done. So it is very sort of convenient
clean
rain.
And
clean.
You could morning.
You could plan your day around it. And it was also very interesting because it was the only city, I remember when I was in IISc, the Indian Institute of Science, you had a road and this side of the road would be raining. I'm not saying a long road, but along the width of the road, one half of the road would be raining and the other half would be bone dry.
Yeah.
You would actually have this very, very regional variation. Rajashinagar was always very rainy. JP Nagar would always get less rainfall. But if you again look at the trajectory of the city, it's all to do with the elevation. We now think of it as homogeneous because Bangalore was a rocky and undulating city with such wide terrain differences. And now we've kind of raised that, right? We filled in the wetlands. We have blasted out all the rocks. And it's relatively flat in the elevation now compared to what it was before. But that also means the regional variation, because the east was very flat. The west was very rolling hill. You don't see those differences anymore. And that has really modified the microhabitat. So the rainfall patterns, everything else has changed because we have modified the topography of the city.
What about you, Mr. Singh?
Part of it is due to the overall global warming now. The rainfall patterns have changed. As Harini was saying earlier, it was called the officegoers' rain because it would start at about 5 o'clock and then end at about 7:30. But that pattern has now got disturbed. You see, as Harini and Prakash both were mentioning, it was a dry country earlier. The environment of Bangalore was actually man-made. It is shaped by human intervention. It is said during Kempegowda's time there were 400 keres, that is the reservoirs, lakes.
They're actually tanks, accurately.
Keres, tanks. As he mentioned, Bangalore is situated on a ridge. And the rain falling on the ridge, when it flows down, and the ridge is in an east-west direction. So it takes the shape of certain streams, and those streams at suitable places were dammed. And you had these keres. Now, interestingly, the eastern part of Bangalore is part of the Palar Basin, and western part is part of Kaveri Basin.
Okay.
So making use of these little streams, then people built all these keres, and that led to agriculture and horticulture because it's primarily suited to both kinds of culture, agriculture as well as horticulture, and that's how it became a green city. The greenery of Bangalore actually is the result of all these keres which have now been broken up and turned into layouts. And that is the reason why you have so much of flooding in Bangalore, because these were the natural water flows which have now been disturbed.
So what is interesting is that while the Bangalore has certain natural relief features that have shaped the city, there were also man-made plantations, lakes, all that. Both of them came together to shape the city the way it is.
There is one interesting thing in this, I'll tell you. See, now we are getting more water from 775 million liters per day. More water is coming from the Kaveri. But earlier we used to get 1,450 million liters of water per day. That would translate to about 6% of the flow of Kaveri, so about 18 billion cubic feet of water from the Kaveri. But we also were getting an average 18 billion cubic feet of water from rainfall. So the rainfall in Bangalore was a very important natural resource that enabled all this.
Which sort of got collected in the 400 plus lakes that we're talking about. What about Rajakaluves and what role did they play?
Before Kaveri water started flowing into Bangalore, the main sources of water were Tipkondanhalli and Hesarghatta reservoirs, which are built on these small streams which are tributaries of Kaveri. When I came to Bangalore, I was looking at what is now Vrishbhavati river, which is a drain. I didn't realize that it was a river called Vrishbhavati. I just thought it was just a sewer. So natural water courses of Bangalore have now been turned into sewers, which is, I think, the biggest tragedy that has occurred as far as climate and water management and environment and ecology is concerned.
If you go back even further, if you think of, so when they started creating the lakes, originally there was Dharmambudhi, there was, some few other lakes. If you look at Agara, there is an old inscription from 890 AD, which talks about 860 AD, which talks about the fact that there were 3 large lakes in that neighborhood. We don't even know what the other 2 lakes were because we have Agara, but what are the other 2 lakes? Nobody knows.
In Baswangudi, we have Karanji Anjaneya Devasthana.
But there's no Karanji.
There is no Karanji,
which is a water body. Yeah.
So, a city with so many lakes how did it integrate into people's life, right? The role that lakes play here, I'm sure would be very, very special in how
And
the
the
life is
Rajakaluves.
constructed. Rajakaluves. What are Rajakaluves? Can you just
see,
explain that to us? And
these keres not only influence the microclimate of Bangalore, they also recharge the wells.
absolutely, absolutely.
So many people were dependent on wells. Most households in
Had a well.
old Bangalore, they had their wells in Baswangudi, etc. I don't know if still those wells are with
So we did
water
a
or
study
they're all
where we look
dried up.
at the cantonment area, just the cantonment area, old Bangalore. There were 1,490 wells marked on an 1888 map.
Yeah.
And by when did we do the study? 2005 or 6. There were only 45. So 1,490 to 45. Just went straight.
The wells
Sir, I
went
want to
dry.
tell you,
Yeah.
I'm a
No,
member
just
at
disappeared.
Bowring
Disappeared.
Institute.
Mhm.
At Bowring, they've broken on the west side of Bowring, they've broken the sports sections and they're rebuilding it, at some.
Huh.
And there was always, because it is a protected, Bowring is a protected monument. They said because there was supposed to be an old well there. That when they broke it down, they rediscovered the well. Okay, there is water there. And that mason there, he told me that the workers, when they saw the water, they drank from it. He says it's clean water. It's actually available at 10 to 12 feet. And I'm amazed. So we don't know the underground really, we should know where the aquifers are, So it's an
see,
amazing thing.
Kaveri water came only in mid-70s, 75 or so. Before that, it was the keres and the wells and water supply from Hesarkatta and Tipkondanhalli.
Yeah.
That's what sustained Bangalore. And flow of groundwater, you see, not enough studies have been done. But we find that because of Kaban Park and the area around Vidhan Sauda, this part, there is good recharge. And water levels are coming up. But in all other areas, the groundwater is in a precarious condition. Now, when I was director of mines and geology, we used to say that you do not get water beyond 300 feet because the weight of the overlying rock closes the gaps. And water here, you see Bangalore is basically, it's gneissic terrain. So
What?
water is
Bangalore is?
gneissic.
It's it's the oldest, hardest rock on earth.
Oh, okay,
Nice,
okay, okay,
nice.
okay,
Granite,
okay.
nice.
Okay.
GNEISS.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
So the water is stored in the weathered rock and in cracks. So the weather and the cracks, etc., because of the weight of the overlying rock, it sort of closes that. So you don't go beyond 300 feet, but now you are drilling up to 1,500 also. And the water which is now being pumped out is the primordial water which was stored when the rocks were formed. Kaban Park, Vidhan Sauda, this area, the studies have shown that the groundwater level is the same and it's being adequately recharged, but not elsewhere.
Okay.
Elsewhere, the withdrawal is much more than recharge.
No, the Rajakaluves are actually they're a network of canals that connect the higher level. When the tanks at the higher level, which are necessarily smaller, they overflow. They're channeled through the Rajakaluves to a lower level.
These are
tank.
what drains?
And these are like
Rajakaluves
canals.
are
We will not call-
Rainwater.
Yeah, so
rainwater canals.
So I want
Now
you to
drains.
explain.
now
yeah.
drains, but yeah.
So if you look at Bangalore, there are 3 ridges and they run sort of
Yes.
east-west, kind of north-south, but also directionally sort of east-west. So High Grounds Police Station, we used called High Ground because it was the highest ground in Bangalore on one of the ridges.
Okay.
And when you find, the lakes or the tanks on the high ridges, they had this very interesting overflow system. You look at across peninsular South India, the Cholas were one of the people who really developed this. The idea was not to waste any water. So if you had the system of tanks, one tank got a lot of water on highest elevation, and when it overflowed, it would overflow into the kaluves. Smaller ones were kaluves, larger ones are called Rajakaluves.
Oh,
That's the only difference,
okay.
is the size of them. And they fill and they overflow into the next one and the next one. And then they had this gate system. So irrigation, the way it was done was passive irrigation. So you would close it and the lake would fill up, and then you opened the gate or the tubu and it overflowed into all your orchards. So you get this overflow irrigation system and agriculture, and then it went to the next one. And those are what we call drains today. As Mr. Singh was saying, the entire Vrishabhavati river becomes a drain. The Rajakaluves is a sewer. It's very sad. But they're rainwater channels. They are not drains as we think of them originally.
You see, it was the system of a series of reservoirs. See, if this is the stream, you have a suitable place to tap the water here. You built the dam here and you got the reservoir here. And then it would overflow and come to the same stream, would come to this place, and you have another kere here and then another kere here. For example, this Sampangi Ram Kere, in the 70s, there was still water in the Sampangi Ram Kere, which is now your indoor stadium. You would remember probably.
There's for the Karaga, it used to begin from there.
Yeah, it would begin from
They still have
there.
that small water body.
The first time flooding happened in Bangalore was around 1986, when you remember Guru Nanak Bhavan's basement got flooded. Because the Miller's tank was encroached.
Flooding till then, Prakash?
Bangalore never had flooding before.
Okay, and what was this trigger point in flooding?
It was rain. It was rain when they had blocked these channels and they had encroached on Miller's tank. There was
That
no
was
place
the first
to store
flooding,
the water. Yeah, that was the first flood.
So just staying in the past a bit, so these channels, the natural reliefs that we spoke about, how did it shape the flora, fauna, the lifestyle, the cultural rhythm, the city's rhythm?
But even if you go further back, let's go to the inscription stones, which are our oldest written history of Bangalore. And if you look at the inscription stones in the west of Bangalore and the east of Bangalore, they're completely different. The east is where there's the agriculture, more rainfall, more temples, more rice, more settled sort of population.
And east, when you say, can you just name some of the areas, colonies
near the HAL airport area, Vartur Lake, Belandur Lake, Begur, all of those areas.
Okay.
And if you go west, that is the areas closer to Bannerghatta National Park and along the High Grounds Police Station Ridge area. Those were scrub jungle. You will have stories of hunting attacks, boars, hunting dogs, cattle raids, the battles over Bangalore. So Begur is sort of the cusp of it. You also have the agriculture and you have the battles. So it's cattle, pastoralism, wild beasts. And it's rocky terrain. And I remember even till the 80s, you could see the difference between west and east. Now you don't see it anymore. But so it was Bangalore, because of this ridge, had two ecologies. There's one side to the west, which is really the rocky terrain, and it goes off into the Kaveri Basin, and the east, which is the flatter terrain, which goes off into the Palar Basin and goes into Tamil Nadu. The same river. So it's very different in terms of its ecology. You don't see that nowadays.
There is one more factor you must remember, although I don't know why it is so. The soil of Bangalore is very rich. You can grow almost anything here. And I'll tell you a curious incident. There's this, I think his name was Srinivas, expert on this bonsai thing. In the bonsai competition, they would handicap Bangalore grown things because they said the soil is so good. They would handicap that in the competition.
Maybe because of the Kere silt.
The soil is very good here.
Okay, explain that. I don't know.
So all these lakes had to be desilted. So what happens today when you say restoration, the idea is because every 9-10 years, Belandur Lake has now filled up. It becomes this multi-100 crore project that you have to dig out silt. But what all the farmers did every year, these were seasonal lakes. So they would fill up in the monsoon, they would be dry during the summer, and farmers would take the silt out, put it in the
topsoil is washed and settled there.
So they would actually desilt. They would so Agara, the inscription that I was telling you about, there is also an inscription in 890 which talks about a farmer who gets a tax break because he brings the cart to desilt, and he gets a tax break on paying the taxes for 3 years in his crops on the land.
Okay.
So they were desilting this, and that silt made these lands very rich, and that was part of the ecology.
Also, the eastern Bangalore was under the British. Western Bangalore was
Maharaja.
part of the Maharaja's domains. Now, actually, it was not called cantonment earlier. It was called a
Civil
military
and-
station.
civil and
military
military
station.
Military
Yes,
station.
correct.
And this was governed directly from Chennai, then Madras, and was part of Madras state actually. So the British people, they had these large bungalows, and they each bungalow had its own garden, and that model was then taken up in Baswangudi and Malleshwaram, which were the new extensions when the plague came to Bangalore, and after that it was decided to decongest the old Bangalore and have new layouts. That's when Baswangudi, Sheshadripuram, Malleshwaram, they came. And if you notice, the old bungalows were old houses were all in a spacious compound. And so the British contributed a lot to the greenery of Bangalore. And later on, Kurumbigal and after Kurumbigal, Javaraya, H.C. Javaraya, they played a role in the...
and then Marigauda.
Marigauda came later.
Yeah. See, that Kurumbigal was, he was the curator of Kew Gardens. And if I remember right, the Prince of Baroda, he got him to do the palace gardens. And when the Nalvadi Krishnaraj Vadayar had gone there, he requested Kurumbigal to come to Bangalore, and then a different...
What did he do here? Can you talk about that? I know a lot of people talk about cherry blossom, tabebuyas, all these plants being imported into and planted all across in the constant flowering season that Bangalore
6 seasons.
sees. Yes.
Yeah.
You see, first, he was superintendent of Maharaja's gardens both at Bangalore and Mysore. Later on, H.C. Javaraya became his assistant, and he looked after Mysore, and Kurumbigal remained in Bangalore. So, for example, the planning of the avenue trees, the idea was that you introduce trees, some of which would be in bloom throughout the year.
Beautiful.
So the old Bangalore, and the roads, for example, in Malleshwaram, you had Margosa Road, which had neem trees. You had Sampige Road. I mean, these names are still there, although you don't see Sampige trees in Margosa, but the road names tell you that. So the avenue trees planting. And then he brought a lot of foreign plants to Lal Bagh, which became a nursery. And then these were, especially the fruit trees, they were disseminated from here. And Bangalore, especially the eastern side of Bangalore, the cantonment had large bungalows, and they all had their gardens. The garden city name for Bangalore came because of that, not because of Kaban Park and Lal Bagh.
Because of these flowering plants.
No, also
And homes with trees.
The gardens in each bungalow.
Oh, okay.
In the old bungalows, there would be the jackfruit, mango, the stampak tree.
Something.
There would be
Custard
the
apple,
sitapal.
jackfruit,
Sitapal.
yeah.
There'll be gooseberry.
Chiku, spota.
There'll be
Sapota.
There'll be chakota.
Yeah. So
Citrus.
each bungalow had these trees, and that's how it became
A garden.
In my
Oh.
grandmother's house, all these trees were there in Baswangudi. Yeah.
But again, I'll take us a little bit step back before that. So if you think of how, again, the oldest map we have, if there is actually a very old poem, which is one of the oldest written histories we have of Bangalore, which is during Shahji's time. It is a Padmanand's court poet who talked about it. And there he talked about Bangalore, which is trees thick with shade lining the roads. Each home garden had its own trees. There were fountains at the square. There was
this
a
was
moat.
Shivaji's...
Shivaji's father.
When Shivaji's
He was married here.
Coronation
was...
There is a mention about another poet who praises Bangalore, but I think slightly exaggerated poetry is there.
But here, they talk about peafowl, they talk about the trees, and they talk about the shade. So then if you look at Hyder and Tipu, we also talk about the fact that Lal Bagh was, cypress trees, but they were actually gardens and orchards. And Tipu was getting pomegranates, he was getting eucalyptus, he was getting trees from across the world. And then the British came with a much larger palette. So everywhere, if you look at Calcutta's Kew Gardens or wherever they go, they have access to Madagascar's plants, they have access to Brazil's plants. They are a colonial power, right? They're global. And as Mr. Singh was saying, Krumbigal was captivated with the idea of Ritu Samhara. So Ritu Samhara, Kalidas's thing that a king should have a garden with trees that flower every part of the year.
Yeah.
Ecologically, how will you do that? If you have trees from one region alone, we have a current obsession with native trees. Now, if you have only native trees, we'll actually be dry and hotter in summer than we are, because everything's going to be deciduous in summer and it's all going to flower at the same time. So they brought in this idea of the rain tree, the gulmohar, the copperpot, the tebibuyas, which are such a part visually of our landscape. But it's also again interesting because we look at the British parts of the city, the civil and military stations, they're all flowering. The British have an aesthetic of visual and not smelling. And if you look at the Indian parts of the city, that's where you'll have the sampige or, the fruiting trees, because we have an aesthetic of smell and of taste.
Yeah.
And that's what we want. And they're very distinct ecologically in terms of the planet. Very interesting when you look at that.
The gardens vanished.
Yeah.
The first unfortunate development, or whatever you call it, was when the urban land ceiling was brought in during the emergency. So all these large compounds, people were afraid that government would take over, and notices started going to various people. So immediately these were broken up and partitioned, and then once you break up the whole compound, then the trees went, the multi-storied buildings came up, and the character of Bangalore changed. I think the urban land ceiling also played a part in changing the character of Bangalore.
As we talk about the character, today if you look at, the tall towers that sort of dot the skyline in Bombay, right? As compared to if you look at the Lutyens Delhi, it's very bungalow, that sort of structure. The high-rise which have come into the Bangalore, and Bangalore is still sort of embracing that, especially the newer parts. How did this life, which is the flora, fauna, vegetation, all that we spoke about, shaped our lifestyle in the city? Is there anything that was very distinct about the city at that point of time? Like you spoke about houses with gardens, right? There was, I'm sure, rituals around going to the parks, going to the lakes. What else? Do you remember or do you recall from historical times, rituals? How did all this shape our lifestyle? Anything, one or two things that stand out?
I have only one line to say on that, Up to the 80s, there was a predictability about living here, about our lives here, like rainfall, seasonal fruits. Aurekalu will come only.
So you carried umbrella every evening to work?
So some people in that season, in that time, So there was a predictability about life here. I don't think that is there anymore.
Lots of things. I'm thinking of avocado, yes. Monkeys, squirrels. So many monkeys in Bangalore. They were always there all around the place. You barely see them nowadays. Peacocks in the heart of the city. COVID time, I saw the peacocks come back. So there were a few things that were like signature events.
Birds, when playing cricket, we would see 7 parakeets going, 12 parakeets going.
Frogs and toads. All our bungalows, you're talking about the
bungalows. They would come into the homes.
They would come into the homes, they would be there in the gardens, and cobras. So many cobras we all shared space with, which are no longer there in the city.
There is one more thing I will say. This idea of insider, outsider thing was not so strongly felt. But in the public sector, I knew that many people from the outside had come. And in Bangalore, the only kind of resentment against outsiders I felt as a kid was against Tamil people. It was not against all Tamil people. It was because all of us had Tamilian friends that we grew up with. They were in our streets and, they were in our families. But there was some kind of resentment against Tamils. But you see, only later I understood what he said. that it was Madras presidency thing. Those Tamilians were never integrated into Bangalore like the Maharaja's period Tamilians were integrated. In 1991, it was summarily and very badly settled with violence against them. After that, thankfully, that anti-Tamil feeling is not there. This insider-outsider that is there now in Bangalore is really a very new development. And it comes with this idea of who is a Bangalorean. That question was never asked before. Everybody in Bangalore is a Bangalorean.
And you have an answer, please tell us.
And my answer is what I have told you before. Anyone who says I'm a Bangalorean is a Bangalorean. Anyone who says I'm an outsider will be treated like an outsider by themselves and by others. There was this lady, an anecdotal story I'll tell you and stop, who said, if it goes like this, 25% of us will leave Bangalore. Okay? Those who feel they can leave Bangalore are outsiders. Those who feel like they cannot leave Bangalore are Bangaloreans. So.
I would just say one thing, Prakash. People did not support the emergency overwhelmingly or Indira Gandhi. They supported Devrajars.
I see. Correct. Okay, perhaps, yeah.
It was Devrajars who was voted in, not the emergency.
So, Bangalore has many natural sort of things here, from flower to tree to lake or any other natural element. What symbolizes old Bangalore for you? When you think about old Bangalore and natural.
For me, it's a lake, it is a woman grazing a cow, and the fisherman in the coracle boat.
Wow.
That's it.
The Petes of Bangalore.
That won't be natural though, right?
But it started with Petes. The Kempegowda established the 22 Petes. So Bangalore began with Petes.
Okay.
So,
What about you?
Rain. Beautiful. Bangalore rain is beautiful. It was never an enemy. Suddenly it has become an enemy.
As the city has grown and the things have changed about the city, right? What routine or ritual you lost to the city's changes? You've had to adjust, right?
Easy. Walking. Bangalore was a walking city. Now you can't walk. All the 98 wards in the British time that happened, you could walk. You can't walk anymore.
In the 70s, a former chief secretary who was later on also lieutenant governor or governor of Goa, not lieutenant, governor of Goa and principal secretary to the Prime Minister, Mr. Satish Chandran, as finance secretary in the 70s, would walk from his house in Baswangudi to Vidhan Sauda. You could do that.
So beautiful it was.
And it's unthinkable now.
The walking, I agree, because in the 90s, so when I was in ISC, my husband and I would go to watch the midnight movies in Brigade Road, and then we would walk back. At 12 o'clock at night, Brigade Road, all the way back to the Indian Institute of Science. A, you could walk, and B, it was safe. I can't imagine either of those two things, It's just impossible now. And
but it is also relative. I've begun to walk a little bit more in this city. In Delhi, I never walked. Delhi, I never walked. Never. The last question before we dive into the second section. When did you first realize Bangalore's climate, weather is changing or has changed? At a personal level, your experience, anything that told you, things are not the same anymore?
That flood in 1986, when the women's hostel next to Miller's Road.
I was living there then. Yes, I remember
that
it. That
flooding filled my heart with shame. I felt my city is changing. That's the first incident.
We had to climb to the roof and wait to be rescued.
Yeah, we had never heard of it. And I remember, I think the Ramakrishna Hegde government was there that time. He gave 20 crores to desilt the canal and all that time. But it was already too late, I felt.
What about you, Harini? Is there a moment that you remember that city had changed, its weather had changed?
We left the city for 2 years. So we had gone 97, 98, came back end of 98. Soon after that, we started seeing all the changes. That's just after that.
What did you notice? So what was the change that sort of triggered this thought?
All the cutting of the trees, all the infrastructure projects that started cutting trees Here's 500 trees gone. There's 1,000 trees gone. Here is 5,000 trees marked for cutting.
Road widening.
All the road widening infrastructure, metro, highway, underpass, signal-free corridor. That was the signal for me.
You know, all the choices that the city has made since those 70s, 80s, the growth era when it began to take off, I think has brought us to where we are. And I think let's try and dive in. You were at the helm of it in the government at that point of time. Do you remember some of the pivotal moments of decision making, of policies, of decisions, which today in flashback sort of looks like very significant turning points for the city, for its climate, for the way city has grown?
Well, as I mentioned, first was the introduction of urban land ceiling. Second was when Mr. Ramakrishnan Hegde was the chief minister, he had a think tank which was kind
This
of
is the
an
80s,
advisory body. And for urban planning and architecture, etc., Charles Correa was the member. There were experts from different fields in the think tank. And Charles Correa, I would blame for this rash of multi-storied high-rises.
Yeah.
You see, during one of the discussions, because as I don't know which department I had, but I remember saying that you preserve the old area as it is, allow high-rises to come out in the new extensions, which is in the periphery, which Paris, for example, has done. Charles Correa opposed it. He said, no, we must have high-rise, for example, on MG Road. And you get beauty from the contrast. This was in relation to the Vishvesvaraya Towers coming up next to Vidhan Sauda. Actually, there was a bylaw which said that in an area, I don't remember now how many meters or yards or whatever from Vidhan Sauda, you could not have a high-rise building.
Mm-hmm.
So the first flouting of this bylaw was the telecom building, which is a very ugly building by the side of Vidhan Sauda, with its tele tower those days. Second was Vishvesvaraya Towers. And it was Sir Vishvesvaraya's residence. So I suggested, including on the file, that convert it into a museum rather than have this. But it was Charles Correa, I think, who persuaded them to go in for high rises. So otherwise, MG Road was a very beautiful road. I mean, if you see some of the 2-3 old buildings which are still there, the kind of road it was like. So then the high-rises started coming up on MG Road after Vishvesvaraya Towers, and then it sprouted all over. And the third was the coming in of the IT industry. In fact, let me see, 1994. I had 2 charges. One was information, tourism and youth services, and another of urban development housing. I had come from mines and geology and groundwater department, and I could see the water problem of Bangalore. And also there was a movement in North Karnataka that we should have capital somewhere in the north, an alternative capital. So I made a plan with the urban development department of shifting the capital out of Bangalore to a place near on the other side of Tungabhadra, Ranebenur Taluk. And it was a very detailed exercise which we had done. I had even tied up funding for the new capital from HUDCO, Housing and Urban Development Corporation. And it would have come to about 300 crores per year, the repayment, which is nothing in the overall budget of
This
the
is the
state.
80s or 90s?
93, I think.
So mid-90s, around mid-90s, early
Mid-90s.
90s. Okay.
No one looked at that.
What was your rationale for building? To decongest?
To decongest Bangalore first, and secondly, because Bangalore I could foresee would have a lot of water problem. Now, all the new areas in Bangalore are having water from bore wells through tankers.
Yeah.
We don't know the source of water. We don't know how it is purified or treated. And because now you are using borewell water which is drawn from great depths in the eastern side, you have started getting not only fluoride but also arsenic in water. And this water is being supplied to all these new areas. But no one looked at that. I mean, it was a very carefully done exercise. And it would have really not affected Bangalore in any way, because Bangalore had developed. And it was again Charles Correa, the member of the think tank, who had earlier in 1973 or so in a paper had written that every state should have its capital, a new city every 10 years. That's how you have urban development in India, because our old cities, you can't do much with them. But then no one looked at it. Total lack of urban planning and rush of high-rises started from that point onwards. I can say that it is still a very good city, but it's not what it was like.
Just staying on the high rise, high rise is also a factor of growth, right? Density, number of people. So what you're saying is you were not opposing high rise, but it's the area where you build and you take a considered call, right? Where
see,
high rise come, where low rise come.
I live in Indiranagar. You had a certain number of houses. The sewer lines were laid down with that capacity in mind, and this is all over Bangalore. Suppose the water lines and sewer lines have X capacity, and you make it X plus
100X.
10 or 100, whatever. What is the result? All over Bangalore, when it rains, you find that your manholes are overflowing. The sewer capacity, the water lines, they have not kept in line with the growth in the inner city.
Sure.
So all this has been unplanned growth. And the rush of growth has not taken into account any of these problems.
Sure. Harini, you want to talk about what are some of the decisions that the city has taken, that we have taken at a policy level, at a infrastructure level, that you think has had very significant impact in the way the city looks today, feels today, has grown?
I mean, I wouldn't have the deep sense of administrative history that Mr. Singh has, which is very interesting.
Talk from your
But
lens,
from
Harini.
my perspective, I can see a few things that have changed. One is just transport. We have so much prioritized private transport over public in this city. And that leads to this insane wish to continuously expand road infrastructure. To the point that now if you talk to the forest department, horticulture department, whoever is in BBMP, BDA, everyone will say that we are not going to plant trees on the side of the road, because when you widen the road, you will have to cut the trees and then the activists will complain. So we will not plant trees on the side of the road. So in their mind also, they envision this over, infinitely expanding road surface. But, we have seen through our own research that trees on roads are the most important because they reduce heat, they remove air pollution. They have incredible capacity to reduce air pollution. And that's where most of your, the construction workers, the people walking on the road, the people cycling, the people taking buses are there. So I think that we have completely de-emphasized. Like you look at the metro, you look at bus rapid transport. It's only in Bangalore that the metro takes probably 5 times as long to actually come up as any other city. It's in Bangalore that we tried the bus rapid transport. We had lanes for them. In Jayanagar, I don't know if you remember, there was this cycle marking scheme. That is gone. So any experiment we've done with public transport, the city has systematically demolished. So that is for me is a big decision. The second decision is if you look at the periphery of the city, because I have lived in Jayanagar, JP Nagar, Indira Nagar, Cunningham Road, and now come to Sarjapur, and I can see the contrast. The center of the city has parks, walking spaces, green spaces for every resident, let's say 1 kilometer away. The periphery of Sarjapur where I am has no parks, nothing which is a walking space.
So public spaces have vanished in new planning.
Because there is no urban planning. What it says is every village was left to do what it could, and that was been a mass expansion of greed essentially. Let's just violate let's not think about the planning, who has water. Let's not think about who has place to park. Let's not think about who has space for anything. Let's just quickly give permissions for people to build. And now the people who've come in are dealing with the repercussions. So I think that is
what Harini has said is very true. Bangalore has become hostage to cars. In fact, the sane transport planning would be that you do not widen the roads, existing roads. In fact, you restrict the ingress of vehicles onto those areas. This is what cities in Europe do. You can't take cars inside, in the inner areas of Geneva or Copenhagen or any of those cities. Even London has now restriction on the inner city, the traffic. That should have been done. Here, you break even the buildings to widen the roads. This is madness.
What about the green cover, all that? Any policy decision that we have taken? What about lakes, encroachment, green cover, Rajakaluves?
Actually,
go ahead.
That's it. No, I'm going to prompt him. What happened to the green belt that was envisaged in the 80s? What happened? Why wasn't that followed? The idea was there that there will be this central portion of Bangalore and new development will happen, in a suburban thing, and there'll be an intervening green belt. It was a great vision, that the idea of the donut. What happened to that? You were there at that time and you would know what happened. How notification and denotification. I believe there is now re-notification. I believe so.
That paid for all your elections.
Yeah.
But I really think a lot of the decimation of the green happened because we privatized the road. We privileged the road over everything else.
Yeah.
If you look at our policies, they're still very good. They will say that Bangalore should have 2 trees per house. They will say that you need so much green space per capita person. You will need the lakes. You're supposed to have a buffer zone, which is now widened.
Now being encroached.
Yeah, everything has been violated in practice.
They've made law to encroach on the buffer zone now.
Yes. Can you elaborate on that, Prakash? It was in the news recently.
No, see, there are 3 aspects to it. Any space is a finite idea. This is all you can do in that space. And if you do more than that, you will stress that place. We crossed that point about 20 years ago in Bangalore easily. You cannot do anything more than that here. If you're saying more jobs will be, there is this, she said, this infinite expansion of road space, she said. Actually, that will stop. I feel we should understand that there is no future going forward with actually, they've made a plan. The new master plan is looking at imagining that Bangalore will have 2.5 crore population in the coming 15 years. There's an idea that about 350 million people will move out of villages into Indian cities now. They'll come to the cities that exist as it is now if you keep this going, but it's not possible. Actually, it can't expand anymore. The Gurgaon traffic jam, that image is a kind of iconic thing. It is, right?
You can't, flooding now. Flooding. Yesterday's.
It looks like rivers are flowing in there. It's not going to sustain. It needs to stop. So the first idea is that you must have, if a new capital is not possible, it's possible in another way. I will say that you must really imagine that It should happen to every place in India, but in Karnataka, we should have at least 5 different cities, that are capitals. That means you have 5 Kannada-speaking states. Nothing will happen to Kannada, but you cannot have one person sitting at Vidhan Saudha who has barely time to walk around the city or look around the city to look after 7 crore population. It's not possible, I think. So you should break up Karnataka into 5 states. This is the first thing.
That's a sharp statement, huh?
No, but that's an important decentralization idea that you must do. It's not sustainable.
Yeah.
No, when the deputy chief minister himself says, even God cannot save Bangalore,
So you meant Bangalore, right? You didn't.
No, I mean Karnataka.
Karnataka. Okay.
Bangalore they've got that decentralization with the re-centralization, but leave that for the moment. But Karnataka should, so that concentration on developing Bangalore even further in this limited space stops. There is scarcity of water, scarcity of space, and the underground infrastructure has been overstressed and severely compromised, and you can't have this perpetual digging and reshaping it. It's not going to happen.
Can I ask one question here? And I see in Delhi, right? If you look at Delhi, at one end is Gurgaon, and which is going further and further towards Rajasthan, right? That growth is kind of happening. And on the other, that's Noida, there's Greater Noida, there's Jewar. So there's this growth happening at 2 ends. So while Delhi remains where it is, it's the periphery of Delhi which is being managed, the growth. It's absorbing the growth, absorbing people, jobs, all that. And so basically creation of new suburbs, new sub-cities in proximity with, which is what NCR's lure is.
But I think that idea you should stop now. It should not be suburbs at all. You should build new cities, and there should be new capitals, because politicians are not going to develop a city where they don't live. Okay. So where they get elected, they'll keep the way it is. They'll come to Bangalore, do business here. There is one politician who says, I'm in politics to do business. So this is what we have. This is the truth of it, okay? I think that is important. And the laws they're making, see, first they said there should be 10% of the space should be public, public parks and so on was there. Some years ago, some 6-7 years ago, they removed that and made it 5%, okay? Or it was 15%, 10%.
So public space, 10% reserved, has been reduced to 5%.
There's no playground. There's no park.
Bannerghatta National Park.
There's
the
no
eco-sensitive zone was supposed to be 300 meters and 100 meters. Now 100 meters is gone. You have a national park. You have tigers there. You have elephants. And you don't want to leave a 100-meter buffer. So what are we leaving with? What is the
So you can make, my last thing on this, you can make decisions because you got elected somewhere else. From any party, I'm not blaming any single party, of the political classes like this. They get elected in what they've converted into boondocks in their heads. They don't do anything to that place. They come here, they do business here. And there is no consequence because they don't need to get elected here. This needs to stop. If you have 5 states in Karnataka, some of these guys will go away. So it will be much better.
I support totally what Prakash has been saying, because
this is the 5 states.
I had earlier written about it and spoken about it, of course not about Karnataka alone. I had said that states in India need to be broken up according to the old cultural zones. For example, UP is actually Kashi, that is Bhojpur, you have Awadh, you have Agra, and you have Braj, and you have Bundelkhand, you have similarly
the Tere Garhwal,
Yeah,
Uttaranchal will come.
You have,
Purvanchal.
You have in Maharashtra different regions. Vidarbha is there. There is agitation in Vidarbha periodically for statehood. You have Malvan, Vidarbha, Malvan, etc. South Maharashtra, Kolhapur side has much more in common with North Karnataka than with North Maharashtra. Similarly, in Gujarat, Kutch, Saurashtra, and Surat, and this, they have nothing in common with each other, so we break up. And I think this was carried in the Hindu at some point when I had said about this. And this needs to be done in Karnataka. For example, you have Karnataka, the Karavali area, which is Tulunadu, Konkan and Tulunadu, and you have Hyderabad, Karnataka, which is now called Kalyan Karnataka by whatever name, but these are distinct cultural and geographical zones. And all over the country, they have been brought together artificially. They were never like this earlier. Even till 1956, when the states were reorganized, you had various native states.
562 provinces.
And most of them were very well governed, because now it was the Congress party which sort of presented that, oh, we are the paragons of good administration, and these were badly administered states. Look at Mysore, Baroda, and Hyderabad, and all these states were very well governed states. So it's not that things have improved administratively by bringing in these artificial.
In fact, I remember
states.
there's this state of states study report that India Today does, and when we began doing it, and at that time Goa, Himachal, those smaller states outperformed on many parameters simply because they were smaller to govern, smaller to administer. And in fact, even after the splintering of states like Madhya Pradesh, which got splintered into 2 or 3, Madhya Pradesh,
it was
Chhattisgarh, right? And then Uttarakhand and UP, right? So after the split, administration, all that becomes a lot more easier.
There is one more thing I'll tell you in that. See what that cultural thing is said. If you're proud of your place, you treat it as your own. You want to keep it well. When you love a place, you'll not, destroy it. You will not bring harm to it. So if one cultural people, with their internal diversity, if they are there and a person elected from there is there, there's a better likelihood that person, he or she will look to improve that place because they'll treat it as home. It is when you go to another place, then you don't treat it as home. You think better pasture, you'll go. That is the problem with it. I think it is important for a public representative, at the very least, is to love the place they're in. There's a politically explosive situation that is going to come up in a couple of years because of delimitation. When the southern states, which have had smaller
not
population
too far in the
growth,
horizon, I guess, right?
Southern states have had lower population growth. Because of the nature of delimitation, they'll have lesser representation. So you can have UP with a very large expansion of seats, and southern states with a smaller expansion of states, and that can be an explosive political issue. And it's an opportunity to actually split up the big states, because that way you can manage the resentment that will come up otherwise. If they feel better represented, it will be better. If there is a wise council of people from different parties, and this is negotiated and managed well, this is the only opportunity. Otherwise, we'll have chaos in this country, I feel.
So some of the things we are talking about is probably relevant for all cities. But is there anything specific about Bangalore that you think the city is particularly facing the challenges that we are talking about?
The city, instead of concentrating on metro and the road widening or laying new roads, you first have proper water supply, secondly, proper sewage system, thirdly, garbage collection. if you can manage these three things first, I think the other things can follow.
Yeah, we
To
haven't
my
spoken
mind,
about
these are
garbage.
the three priorities now for Bangalore.
Low hanging fruit,
We haven't spoken of
Yeah.
garbage, and Bangalore has one of the highest, the most expensive garbage collection systems of all of the capital cities in India. I think Mumbai, Chennai are a fraction of the price for collecting garbage, and that's because the money we pay for garbage collection doesn't go to garbage collection. It goes
Can you
somewhere else.
imagine the ruling government saying, we are helpless because there's a garbage mafia? Who do you complain to if the government says this?
So, what role do you think in today's world, media, activists, and public? This is a very, they call it, activism capital of India, right? What role do these stakeholders play, media, people like you, who are experts and also volunteers and civic sort of activists, right? What kind of pressure points, what kind of role have they played so far, before we dive into the future, to shape the city?
If there's anything protected in Bangalore, it's because of that.
Yeah.
If you look at the, ESG's work on protecting lakes, going to the PILs, or if you look at Mr. Devare now and all of the PILs to protect the trees on Bangalore's roads, or civic society in the steel flyover bed and protecting that, or the journalists that, even now a few of the journalists in Times of India or Deccan Herald or whatever, writing tirelessly about environment.
Awareness is a great
It's
thing.
fantastic. It's fantastic.
If there were no activists like Prakash and Harini, whatever little greenery you see in Bangalore, you would not see. And things would be much worse. At least they raised their voice. Sometimes it is heard, sometimes it is not heard.
Resistance is always useful. You may not see results immediately, but resistance is important. You can't be passive and let it happen.
Yeah.
It has not happened because of necessarily state planning. State response to... So I remember, for instance, when we were trying to get Kaikondoli Lake revived, and there was a push by the elected representatives to widen the road further and push into the lake. You're not legally supposed to do it, but that was the push. We worked on this through media. Or the Agara Lake, the wetlands beyond Agara Lake, I think there was a PIL again, there was construction. It was a protest there, but it was media covered. So the moment you get media active, then the politicians respond. And then, I think journalism also plays because it's all come together
But
in
media
Bangalore.
is very supportive.
Very
I must
supportive,
say.
very
They're very
supportive.
supportive.
Because I know the media in other cities, it changes city to city, but Bangalore's media is very well informed about the real issues. They're very educated media in that sense. They don't just write what you tell them. They've done their research, put lots of views together, written a good piece of work.
Yeah. What I also notice is experts pairing up. For
Yes.
example, IIC experts pairing up with, say, civic activists, right? To supply information.
Yes.
In a consistent, so that you can put out a narrative which is robust,
Absolutely.
which is rational,
Excellent.
which is
This
convincing.
is so important, sir. What happens is Bangalore activism has matured to the point where before a protest is done, a consultation is done with
The
experts.
study is done.
Experts come and talk, and then everybody is on the same page. So people don't talk loosely. They understand what they're talking about. It's a very good thing.
There, the Indian Institute of Science has played a very significant role
Yes.
in coming to
Like
the...
Professor Ashish Verma, T.V.
Madhav
Ramchandra,
Gadgil and others.
Madhav
so
Gadgil
many,
from the
yeah.
past. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
many other people, and also...
All three parties opposed the Gadgil report.
Very true.
The serial sites in the Western Ghats. Yeah.
So, in our data report, we looked at, data on jobs are not available city-wise, right? Especially current data, current robust data. So what we did, we looked at grade A office leasing happening. This is Cushman and Wakefield data over the last 10 years, 2014 to 2023. And we looked at, and we of course extrapolated that one job requires X square feet, right? In real estate parlance. And guess which city was the highest by a big margin. This is Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, Pune, Kolkata. Take a guess.
Pune.
Mumbai. Clearly, we're both wrong.
We have to show you that graph. Do you have a guess?
No, what is this about?
So this is about the number of elite jobs, number of white-collar jobs these cities have created in the last 10 years. Okay? Bangalore is the leader by a huge margin.
My God, really?
Huge margin. I'll show you the data report and then you'll say, it's an eye-opener.
One can understand because all the IT jobs are white-collar jobs, whereas Chennai is having these manufacturing jobs, Pune manufacturing.
And white-collar job typically would come at a certain income threshold with a significant multiplier effect, right? Ripple effect into the economy. So anyway, so that we are talking about jobs. So yes, absolutely. Jobs is the big reason why people from Calcutta to Kerala, where social indicators maybe look very good, people are migrating out, right? People are voting with their feet.
Also, actually, the exodus from Calcutta started during the Naxalite problems there, because that's when a lot of industry shifted from Calcutta to Bangalore.
That was in the 80s, that too. You know, Brook Bond came here, Hindustan Lever.
80s, 90s, so many of them.
So Naxalism was responsible for industry shifting from Punjab to Rajasthan and Haryana.
Also, labor movement, right? Labor strikes, all that.
Labor follows industry and wherever jobs are.
I'm saying the Bandh labor strikes, all that hit Calcutta during the communist era, right? And it did get hit. 80s was the time when Bombay also got hit, by the way.
There was one thing you said that was interesting. You said, that there's no robust data on jobs, I feel as we go into the future, this entrepreneurial activity, it's very difficult to map. Every person who starts even a shop will have 2 assistants maybe, or a single assistant. Every person who does any enterprise will create at least one more job or a couple of jobs or more, So that employment data is not
captured anywhere.
So I feel this whole idea of old style of saying people having jobs, I think is now archaic, it's like,
So that's the reason why we are looking at a very alternative source of data. So while the report looks at government data, regulatory data, we look at private data like Quest Corp, right? And then we look at from Swiggy's of the world to Book My Show, Make My Trip, all that, to extrapolate data, to triangulate data, to help you make sense of cities. And it's not just about jobs, it's about how we consume, what we eat, how we entertain, and capturing our city stories at multiple lenses. Sorry, you were saying something.
Prakash said something very interesting. It's very true. Every farmer is an entrepreneur.
Yes, of course.
You see, all that an entrepreneur does, bring in capital, input, output, marketing, he alone has to do on a small patch of land. And in Karnataka, the average holding is 2 hectares, that is 5 acres. Most of them earn their livelihood from 5 acres of land. And no one looks at it as an entrepreneur, this thing. Now, as he was mentioning the other jobs which are created, I used to see during my travels at Ranebenur, there were some shilpis on the roadside. They would be working. So once I stopped and I started talking to them. And I had other shilpis, very close friends like Vadiraj and Kankamurthy and others. And I was also responsible for setting up the Shilpkala Academy here. So shilpis were an area of interest. I started talking to them. And he was very happy and he took me home and I saw the whole thing. And, I calculated one shilpi was giving employment to about 8 people, including his own this thing. Now look at it. The stone that he carves is quarried elsewhere. So quarrying of the stone, transporting it. For transporting, you have to load it onto a lorry. You have to unload it. Once it comes, the master shilpi, he draws, and the others, they chip at the stone, and then they work. And then at the end, the master shilpi comes onto the picture. 8 people, one shilpi gives employment to. even though it is partial employment. But look at this. And we are not looking at, for example, the employment generated by a potter or by a carpenter.
So, and also the modern version, which is all the gig workers, they don't sort of necessarily conform to a regular job, but they are working, right? So
the whole picture of jobs, we are so narrowly focused on that.
So gig economy and some of the markets like US, etc., are capturing that part very well.
Gig economy is different, but I'm saying crafts economy.
Yes.
And this government the central government is opposed to the crafts economy because, when some workers, when some people who are working with crafts people went to the handloom commissioner in Delhi, he said, no, this won't do. We have to clothe so many people, millions, and handlooms don't do this. We have to go in for power looms and big factories. Now, once you have power looms, the handloom, those who are working at home, you render them unemployed.
Yeah. And the skills is gone.
Skill is gone. Yeah. So the whole idea of employment, now I don't know what artificial intelligence is going to do to the kind of jobs which Bangalore has created. How Bangalore would suffer once AI really takes off.
Which is the reason I'm saying this, building roads forever, this idea that, you have to keep shipping bodies into buildings to work. I think all that will go. Even schools, I'm saying, large colleges.
A lot of shaking up.
Who will come to those rooms anymore,
Yeah. So I'm going to just sort of bring us back to Bangalore and the climate, the weather, and where we are, and just looking ahead, right? What does future look like to you? Where we are, what are some of the things that we can potentially do, that we ought to be doing as a city to be able to nudge the direction of growth, this direction of change towards place that we would like the city to see in. So maybe you want to start, Prakash, and tell us where we are and how does future look like to you?
See, we need a mindset change. First, we should believe it will get better. Neither the policymakers nor government nor ordinary citizens believe that things will get better, because when the supply side chokes, facilitation and makes you so desperate, you will accept a tunnel road. Anything goes. I'll accept an elevated road. I'll accept any crazy plan because you feel any change is better than what I'm going through now. It will become.
You're saying desperate.
That
measures.
Mindset we have to change. We should think that before engineering, there should be design. Before design, there should be plan. There should be a plan, and then you should design, and then you should do the engineering. Now we have turned it upside down. First, you have a project in mind. Why do you need the project is not discussed at all. I feel from the policymakers, from the government, and from citizens, we need a mindset change that we can live better than this. This is not correct, the way we live now. Garbage in the street is not correct. You should not think there is no solution. There's no need to generate so much garbage. For instance, everybody is implicated. They think somebody should clean up the garbage, you create the garbage. That's wrong. We need a mindset change all around. And that is possible only with awareness building. And awareness building should happen in 3 ways. We should have academicians, coming into the public, through some channels, through seminars, conferences, talking about it. We need organized communication through social media, through print media. We can't expect television to do anything. It's a cheap, flaky medium, so you can't trust them. But at least print media and social media should do something about it. And we should, on the third level, we should catch them young. We should tell, in your education system, there should be a way of making people conscious citizens, that they are responsible for what happens, not just in planning and design, in terms of way they consume and live.
So mindset shifts, expectations reset, and awareness. Those are the three things that you are recommending. What about you, Harini? Where we are, what does the future look like?
It's very hard. There's no questioning. There are a lot of good groups, civil society groups, community groups, like lake restoration groups, activist groups, people doing PILs. The challenge becomes that finally nobody has the power. I mean, having been involved with this for so much time, I think everyone will agree here. It's like you can stop one thing from happening, but then 2 years later, the same plan comes back. You again push it down the road. 5 years later, the same plan comes back. Ill-planned plan, because it's to make somebody some money, and eventually it goes through and things go. Where I've seen, I think, and where we need to make a difference is, for instance, I have a lot of hope with ward committees if they're done properly, but not the way wards are currently designed. I'm from Mahadevpura ward. Mahadevpura ward is massive. So there's no way one ward committee, the ward committees have been very bad when they functioned, but even if it functioned properly, there's no way it can deal with planning. What if everybody had a chance to say, here are my 2 roads. In my 2 roads, I can plant trees, I can clear up the garbage, I can do whatever. I have a committee that meets that, apartments committees function reasonably well, some other kinds of committees. So you need to have that kind of a place where you have a group that comes together and somehow involved. I completely agree with Prakash, educational institutions. Where we have seen, for instance, lakes protected is if you have a schoolmaster and typically there's a government school next to a lake. Very often you have good school teachers who are really taking care of it. And if the teacher is in charge of the students do lake cleanup, whatever, the lake is taken care of. So small regions where you get educational institutions which have the young involved and people can take control over it, I feel is really going to make a difference.
I agree with both Prakash and Harini. A Swiss citizen once told me that in the 1880s, when there was no electricity, and for all industries, the firewood was the source of energy. In Switzerland, the forests were devastated. And then they looked at their hill country and they said, no, this is going to be an environmental disaster. So we must have tree planting. And he told me the first action they took was to make it a compulsory subject in schools and add it to the textbooks. And they said, 10, 15 years later, when these children grow up, they will plant trees and take care of them. And today, it is such an ingrained culture in Switzerland that even if you are cutting a branch in your own compound, somebody will go and complain that so-and-so is cutting a tree. This is one part. The second is about garbage. Unfortunately, because of our caste system, and I blame our caste system for this, you throw all the garbage, all dirt, and you expect that somebody else will come and clean it after you.
Yeah.
We don't clean our own garbage. This is a major problem which is linked to our caste system. And the other thing is the elephant in the room is the corruption. Ward committees, etc. If crores are spent, in one ward I was told the candidate had spent 40 lakhs to win the ward election. And I'm told now it has gone up to 1 crore, 2 crores. You spend 2 crores in a ward or 1 crore or even 40 lakhs. You have to recover that 40 lakhs first. And you have to then add interest on that because you have spent 40 lakhs to earn profit. So you are forced to earn 80 lakhs from your ward. How do you do that? So unless these two things are taken care of, what do you do? And in short, all that the government can do is stop widening the roads, stop building new flyovers, put money into water supply and sewerage lines and things which can be done by the
basics.
Government at basic and should be done, which government is not doing.
Yeah. Pipes, what are we doing with the smart city?
So caste system and corruption,
yeah.
they have a very strong bearing on our cities and how they are managed and administered.
Can you help deconstruct GBA, Greater Bangalore Authority, that we have just created? And
Why
what does it
should-
mean?
why
What are the implications of it? Just from a sort of
Why should the chief minister and or other ministers, why should they have oversight on a municipal corporation? I mean, does not
First, can somebody explain what exactly has happened? Something very, very important with GBA has happened.
I think you should do it. The GBA.
The Greater Bangalore Authority, the different
Nothing is going to change.
The person in charge is not looking after the city. The person is creating many offices, under him. And those offices will do, how will we do? You step back, let somebody else look after it.
So one is the binary of that what it was and what it is, nothing will change, right?
No, nothing.
I mean, is there a nuance? Is there something that you think will change because of the smaller, in Delhi, for example, and Delhi is a very different place, right, in terms of efficiency, etc.
The kind of funding which Delhi gets, no.
That's what
other
I'm saying. So
city
I'm not
gets.
comparing that. But because of smaller authorities, right, zonal sort of zones that have been created, don't you think it will become more easier
See, the decentralization to that level is good. It's
Yeah.
a very good thing that that decentralization has happened. So where it is possible for aware citizens in those places to bring pressure on the government, to disturb them to the point that there can be a consequence in elections, maybe some change will happen. But you see, the problem is not in that. So if you want to build, let's say, a tunnel road, it will pass through, let's say, 3 of these, municipal corporations. Okay? Then none of these people will have authority over it. The government will have. The problem is big money. You're spending, say, 19,000 crores. Let's say it'll be a multiple of that by the time it's completed. That should be spent by the wards for what they need immediately. By each municipal corporation, they should have a plan and they need money for that. The government should not control that money. What they do is when you do very big projects, see, I will give you an example. In HSR layout, a small civic organization there, I forget the name. I apologize for it, but I saw that thing. They created a shuttle system inside HSR layout for buses to go.
electric cars and things.
Fantastic. That system is so good. So inside that thing, they fixed a minor public transport solution they have found.
This is locally done in HSR, huh?
Yeah, HSR. See, in LCTA, for instance, that's a model. They run it very well. Okay, this GBA is going to take over that place. For what reason you want to do? You use that model to replicate it everywhere. Instead, you're bringing a re-centralizing model and killing local initiative. There is a problem. If you see the ward councillor, as a person you have to fear. We have a real problem, I'm saying. And that is why even those decentralization will give you an opportunity. And some places, because they're inherently, but see, I live in Jayanagar, okay? And through all these years of flooding that have happened in Bangalore in the last 20 years, not once has Jayanagar flooded. Not once. Old Bangalore, nothing has happened. It has rained, but nothing happens. The water drains off. Okay? We walk in the street after that, nothing happens. Okay? That is because inherently those places have civic awareness, active citizens are there. They'll go and harass the councillor or whoever is in charge. Slightly middle class to upper middle class people are there. They have influence. They can bring pressure on IAS officers and so on. So some things are better there. It has got nothing to do with this process. There is a problem that you do not empower from. See, the government should be required for the last person, not to people who can actually manage themselves already, And the last person is compromised by this GBA.
But Prakash, if you don't build tunnels and if you don't build steel flyovers, how do you fund the elections?
That's election economy. I'm not an
Election
expert
economy.
in that. So.
In my book, there is one chapter. It's a collection of my columns in the Vijay Karnataka, in which I have said, of course, this is an argument of reductio ad absurdum, that you should have elections every year, because this is the only way you can bring black money into the white economy from cities to the villages. And also because every year you have to spend the money, the election process itself would become clean.
At least you won't have the potholes.
Whatever you do, so long as you come to the root of the problems, nothing is going to change.
So lovely questions. And I have one last, sort of second last question I'm asking: the best case scenario and the worst case scenario for Bangalore. When you look into the future,
I think it will get better.
That's the best case scenario for you?
It will, no, that is for sure it will get better. How much better is the question? It'll get better.
What makes you say so?
See, because of technology change, nobody calculates for that. You see that this is a city with rocket science, you know. Steven Spielberg has, gets his work done here, but the Kannada film industry does not get its work done with the software industry here. There's a strange gap here. That will close. That gap will close. What will happen is citizens will connect to this. And see, there was a prediction that when ChatGPT 3 first came, Goldman Sachs said that so many million jobs will be lost. They had a huge number, of course, But I feel the job losses that are happening, we lost as many jobs that we lost in 2024 in the high-tech industry by May 31st this year. It's going to accelerate. After that, you see how many job losses. It have happened in places where you never thought it would happen. I don't think so many jobs will be generated anymore in the sectors that you're talking. Also, I will say, one of the reasons why you did not put up a factory in Gulbarga or Bidar, or in the desertifying areas of Karnataka, the largest growing desert in the world, by the way, so is because of high temperatures. Nobody would want to go and work there, but machines can do that work. Robots can do that work. If there's an assembly line kind of work, if it's repetitive jobs, robots can do that very well. And I feel in large manufacturing, actually the poor will be the ones that will be hurt most by the induction of AI, machine learning and robotics in industry. And what will happen is these jobs will go and people will have to go back to an activity, commercial activity that everybody needs, which is agriculture. A lot of people will return to agriculture because the jobs are permanent there and we need food, And mechanization with this kind of land fragmentation, is not going to be a great idea. So they will go back to that, I think. So I can't predict all the changes.
I'm not sure if agriculture would absorb so many people, but it's the services economy, the experience economy, which probably will see a lot of
But what kind of services it will become?
That's what.
So what kind of service economy is a question. I'm not saying I'm any kind of economic expert, but it's a big question to look at. I don't think it's being answered.
Yeah.
That AI will generate new jobs will be there, but there'll be degraded jobs,
Yeah. So
and are you training people for those degraded jobs?
So the point that you are making actually is that Bangalore's future, you see closely linked to the job market and with the pace with which the city is creating jobs.
That will change.
And as that slows down,
it will become a high value.
And that gives you hope.
It becomes a high value city.
Got it.
Where, value addition will be much higher scale. Sure. Where people can work above robotics and AI. That this city will become that, I think, then it will get decongested by itself.
Got it. Harini, your worst case and best case scenario as you look ahead.
I'm an optimist who on the city. But I'm an optimist who on the city is very pessimistic.
Okay, please go ahead.
I see climate change. I see it looming in our future. We have planetary crises. We have the biodiversity collapse. We have the...
Unpack that a little. What do you mean when you say...
At the planet scale, we have many processes that are collapsing. We've reached tipping points. We have crossed 1.5 degrees. Now climate scientists who are doing predictions say it's not 2.5 degrees. We might hit 7 degrees.
My God.
If we hit 3.5, civilization is going to be unlivable. business
are
is
real
not seeing
scenarios,
it.
not hypothetical.
These are real. The IPCC best scenarios, which I've been part of writing reports, the worst scenarios of IPCC are better than the scenarios we're seeing now. Okay, and they're coming harder, faster, and quick. Just
even the IPCC's interim report, by the time the final report came, what they predicted for 50 years had happened already in that interim.
It's really bad. And then there's the biodiversity collapse. Pollinators are vanishing. If you have bees collapsing across the world, who's going to pollinate your vegetables?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's across the world. It's not Bangalore.
Insect populations are
plummeting everywhere.
Dying at a very fast rate.
Very fast rate. Then there is your, pollution. We have the kinds of novel pollutants that we are releasing because of plastics and other synthetics that we create. And the combined effects of all of these pollutants together, no statistics, because your FDA, whatever your permitting authorities, whether they're in the US or India, will permit chemical by chemical. But these chemicals have synergistic effects when they come. We don't know about any of those things. If you look at net, all of these planetary scale effects on Bangalore, on all Indian cities, and all global agglomerations of where human beings are, we are in what we call a polycrisis. And it's not an accident that you have regional wars. It's not an accident that you have, right-wing elected groups across the places or dictatorships coming in. It's not an accident that global inequities are growing. There are certain things going on because it's all related to the ecological crisis. So if you ask me, I feel the way forward. In fact, not just me, a lot of climate scientists, ecologists, sustainability experts are talking about the fact that we are seeing what you call a polycollapse, a collapse of many systems, social systems, financial systems, cultural systems coming. Nobody's looking at that because...
Even the nation state.
Nation state, yeah, everything. So they're saying what will survive is community and what they call bioregionalism. So you have regions which are biological regions, which means they grow their own food.
That's what I'm also coming to.
That's exactly what
you...
Yeah. And that bioregion is what we need to hunker down and to survive. And for that, it's not individuals we'll have to depend on communities. And for that, like you're saying, the idea of the caste boundary has to go. The idea of the hierarchy has to go. And that's very ingrained in us. And so we need to dissolve all that and hunker down into communities. Personally, much as I think still Bangalore is my favorite city, I would probably leave at some point because I'm in Sarjapur. If I was in the central Bangalore area, I would say it was
come to central Bangalore.
But I'm thinking of going to Mysore or somewhere else because it's what Bangalore used to be. Sarjapur is unlivable. In my last 1.5 kilometers, I can take 45 minutes, I can take 1.5 hours, I can take 2 hours. And this is a daily problem.
It's culturally dry.
Yeah. So I still say a die-hard optimist, but about the future, I think one has to be realistic.
At 81, I am not a die-hard optimist. There's not much time left for me on this planet, which is going towards its destruction, as Harini mentioned. I don't know. You see, we just don't know what the impact of artificial intelligence is going to be, not only on Bangalore, but everywhere else. Agriculture, of course, will remain, but what will be the nature of agriculture? Fortunately, because in India, holdings are so small, there is going to be limited mechanization. You won't use a robot for 2 acres of land or 1 acre of land. So people will find employment in agriculture in any case. You see, this obsession with GDP, the growth rate, everybody talks of India's 7% GDP growth, etc. One of the BJP ministers, I was talking to him when I was still in service. This is 1999, and we have around direct and indirect employment in agriculture, say 60%. He said, no, from 60%, we want to bring it down to 40%. And 20% will have to come to the industry. But now between 2000 and 2025, we find that want to bring people from villages to the cities in order to have industry, but industry is going in for automation. A friend of mine was telling me, he was chairman of the Punjab and Sindh Bank, and he visited a factory which had been financed by the bank. It's an ultra-modern factory, totally export-oriented. It's I think, manufacturing some textile, this thing, which is going, all of it is going to Japan, but the whole factory had 4 workers. It is so automatic.
We are witnessing it sector after sector. Automobile industry, I mean, big one, labor intensive, increasingly becoming
so we
automated.
don't know what the impact of automation and artificial intelligence will be, not only on Bangalore, but all over the country. And I think this obsession with 6% growth rate, 7% growth rate is going to be our bane. I don't see things improving. I was talking to last week my very dear friend Ashok Chatterjee, who was heading the National Institute of Design for all those years and made this institute one of the premier design institutions in the world. NIT is a very well-known institution. And he said, he was later chairman of the Craft Council of India.
Okay.
So he's still involved with craftsmen. He said, we were talking of the future of crafts in India, and he said, with COVID, many people were rendered unemployed because factories closed, they were thrown out, and these people, as you saw, some of them even walked to their villages back. He said, there is a kind of reawakening in the craft sector because people realized that yes, this is their employment. The employment in the factories in the cities is uncertain, so they have gone back to their traditional crafts. It's going on. This process is ongoing. Now, a few years back, there was an article written by an expert in the New York Times. It starts with saying that my son is 5 years old. And I was wondering what profession he should go to. And then he listed one by one, and he said, if it's a pilot, the planes would be on autopilot. If it is this is going to be taken over. So what does he do? Ultimately, it is things like physiotherapy, arts, singing, music, etc., those kind of things. And in India, it would be crafts and agriculture. But are we paying attention to that? No one is in the government paying attention to this side. And it's GDP 6%, GDP 7%. We want to take it to 9%. And forgetting that this 9% GDP is not percolating down to the
Last man.
Yeah, last man. So the Gini coefficient is
Gini coefficient,
yeah. India is one of the most, has become one of the most
Unequal countries.
Unequal societies in the world.
So the other way to look at why Gini coefficient probably, so they say, I forget now which country, Bangladesh is, or maybe take off any other poorer country, right? Why Gini coefficient may be much better there, right?
Even Nepal is better.
But certain income hierarchy also means there is growth. But there is another way, which is the Bhutan.
I'm not so sure.
So,
you were saying that real estate, the white collar jobs will trickle down. I think that theory has been debunked. It doesn't trickle down. It sits in the bank balances of the wealthy. There is no trickle down.
No. So look at the services economy that it creates, and
I think there's enough literature in India to combat
the
that.
ripple effect that you're talking
I
about, the
don't
services economy.
It still doesn't percolate down. Some of it percolates, not as much as
Yes. So
it's a different debate for a different time.
Yes. So what you are talking about is the quantum of jobs that was earlier thought that one job will create.
I think
that
if you
quantum does not exist.
instead of the white collar, if you had done the entrepreneurship in the farms, in the thelawalas, that would have created, that would have
But
rippled.
there also entrepreneurship, and we are digressing, we'll diverge. But on entrepreneurship, see, if it's a subscale, and look at the productivity, efficiency, if you want to look at in terms of, for example, farm. Farm is a good example to look at. If farm is under 1 acre, right, a small farm plot, so he will be on basically subsistence farming unless you deploy automation, deploy a lot of techniques for him to be able to...
it's not that. It's this idea of growing food here to send it hundreds of miles across to some other place is a very bad idea.
So that local economy that you spoke about, right, that is another topic. But I'm talking about subsistence farming, right? Why are people running away from farm? It's not profitable.
Because they're not getting the price that...
Exactly.
It's not profitable. That's what
it's not profitable because of the system.
Because the system doesn't value the externalities and
No, but that's the thing. We should get to this point of heat because we must debate at this level. This is where it should begin when we talk, actually.
So maybe just to wrap up, I think what undeniably comes up...
Bangalore is not an island. It's part of a whole...
the whole economy, right?
And whole culture and whole geography. One of the major problems of Bangalore is that the geology and geomorphology were never taken into account while expanding the geographical area.
See, that industrial scale production systems that we had built, I think definitely people are rethinking on that very much. But just coming back to just summing up, so what probably comes out clearly is that jobs and Bangalore are interlinked in some way, right? And they will impact each other in significant way. That's one big sort of takeaway, at least for me, that you guys are seeing. And of course, the somber note that all of you, while you are optimistic, you are not that optimistic.
No, I'm not optimistic.
But as we look ahead, maybe what is important for all of us to do, and maybe the citizens and all the stakeholders in the city, is to wake up, become more aware. Maybe now is the time to push whatever changes we can to make Bangalore better, to make the city better in whatever way.
We should be better as citizens first.
Yes, absolutely.
Don't shoot through the red light.
Yes.
Don't throw garbage in the street. Don't generate garbage. Don't take it back to the shop. I don't. Why so much of wrapping, so much packaging is crazy.
Yeah. So while some shifts will be inevitable, I think there are still changes we can push for. We can push for some of those changes at our level, at a societal level, at an individual level, hopefully at a political, administrative level as well, to sort of move the needle for our city.
I hope Harini is not getting water through a tanker.
We are now getting Kaveri water, but I have rainwater harvesting, which takes care of a lot of our needs.
Okay, good.
But
But others are getting tanker water in that area.
Very badly in Sarjapur. This completely bore water dependent, and it's running
Has
out
anyone
of
got it tested for arsenic and fluoride?
arsenic and fluoride. No, not
Sir, it's
recently.
much worse. I'll tell you what they do is they get whatever water they get. And they've got very fancy, ionizers and so on, okay? And that wastewater is pure poison.
Which gets
They
posted.
put it to the earth, and just poisoning the earth.
Well, I'll tell you what we are finding. We are doing now some work on lakes in the Sarjapur area. And we are finding antibiotic resistance, which is so scary that you will not imagine. Preliminary results, very preliminary, but so much antibiotic
It's being pumped into the chicken farms, into the egg, everything.
In 1984, I asked my department, then it was mines, geology and groundwater, to test water samples from all over. Now, WHO has laid down 22 or so parameters for testing water quality. Not one sample in Bangalore met those standards. Even the Raj Bhavan sample had E. coli contamination.
Oh God, oh God. So we'll just conclude and then maybe we can continue the conversation. So thank you, all three of you, for this lovely conversation. Candid,
wow, energetic.
energetic. So thank you so much for coming.